Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library. And today I have another special guest from Charlotte on, who is definitely a great voice to talk about the tech innovation that's going on in Charlotte. So I want to welcome Terik Tidwell to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Terrell. Actually, very interesting. My middle name is Terrell too, so we'll tell them what that.
Gotcha. It's always interesting to meet other Terrells as well.
Yeah, glad to be on, man.
Awesome. So, Derek, tell us a little bit about your background before you took the role at Johnson C. Smith. Like, what was your professional background before that?
Great question. Man, it's been completely all over the place. I can tell you that. From being a solution architect, working in tech, working with nonprofits, working with business. Kind of over the last 13 years, it's been kind of like going from New York City to Denver, from nonprofit to entrepreneurship startups. So that was kind of over the last 12 years, and then when I was in Denver, I was just like, let me take a break, 3 month hiatus. And it's like, how do I take all these different experiences, like they're isolated, you know, and how do I take these experiences and kind of put that into a role, or look what I'm going to do next, and kind of like, it's like, hey, this is focus on tech-based economic development here in Charlotte, a role that I was very interested in, and Charlotte was a place I was like, very curious about. So it's just like, what, this is probably where, my work is going to be. It's going to be in Charlotte, focus on, tech-based economic development, STEM education, and of course, STEM entrepreneurship.
Awesome. Now, I guess was there anything kind of that spurred you to say, hey, this was the path you wanted to go down? I mean, because I think I always like to hear that from different guests or just different people. Like when it came down and you had all these career options to choose from, like what really stood out to you about this path?
Um, I think it's kind of like just from like my own personal upbringing. Like growing up in New Jersey, for so many years, and being in two different kinds of cities, one with opportunity, one without. But also being in one where there's so much opportunity growing up, where there's engineers, entrepreneurs, people doing great stuff. The person who invented 5G, um, a person of color, and just like seeing like so much richness in culture and so much opportunity. And then you get to college, you get through college, you start doing some community work, and then you start saying, well, how am I, after you graduate, how am I going to give back? And kind of like this kind of started off as just doing some mentorship, and then from there just like grew down a pathway around how do we begin to have these kinds of stronger communities, places like where I grew up in New Jersey, and then just having a chance to see, listen, this is all about economics, right? We have to see that this is about economics. This is about creating vibrant opportunities that are going to allow for everyone to participate. So it's been really like, hey, growing up and just having those kind of opportunities, and then seeing where they are and seeing what the gaps are. And I've always been a problem solver, so I've always been a techie. So it's like, what, I'm going to find my way in tech, do some tech work, but also do some good work, because I think there's ways in which people can do great things without going down traditional paths. And I would say, sometimes you have to go down the unbeaten path, because that's where the opportunities are, and that's where the innovation is going to happen.
Awesome, and I think that brings me to something that stood out about your profile when I was looking and just through conversations with different people. I mean, your profile kept popping up, and I saw the
Mhm.
Smith, the Tech Innovation Center. So tell us a little bit about what that entails and what's
Mhm.
that about.
Yeah, great question. I mean, so the Smith Tech Innovation Center, it's an innovation hub within the university. It's been part of a kind of a in its embryonic stages around launching and supporting this kind of tech-based economic development platform, STEM education, STEM outreach, STEM entrepreneurship, and also STEM advocacy. So that brings together a whole host of things as it relates to like HBCU innovation, HBCU ecosystems. So there's a lot of things that, we have programs, good Lord, programs, um, that we have worked on and built out from working with different partners, impacting our 600 plus students and learners, and also entrepreneurs. I mean, I can tell you, like it's just been a journey for the last 4.5 years. From looking and hosting different startup weekends, bringing together venture capitalists from the West Coast, hosting different kinds of federal stakeholders to talk about policy around STEM innovation and NASA and tech commercialization. And those are things that's like, we have to, for HBCUs and all of that, is really have a engine of innovation that's supporting economic development, and having that kind of like anchor in the community. And I think those are the areas which you might see more of, and particularly more HBCUs continue to flourish in that, particularly around emerging ecosystems. What I mean by emerging, this is not your Atlanta, this is not your DC. It's emerging because you look at the density of entrepreneurship, density of entrepreneurs, particularly of color. You're going to start seeing them popping up in places, and different parts of Texas, different parts of Mississippi, Jackson, in that area of Jackson State University, just doing some other things. So you're going to see, like Fisk in Tennessee, Nashville, you're going to see this kind of emergence innovation happening across the HBCU ecosystem.
Awesome. And I think that that's one of the things that my wife and I noticed when we've moved around in different places. Like my wife was, she was born in Kenya, so she's half Kenyan, half Nigerian, and came to the US probably when
Debo.
she was a teenager. And so, and myself, it's just when my dad was in the military, we moved around different
Hmm.
cities and even just professionally. One of the things that I noticed about Charlotte was that Charlotte's one of those places where it's big enough to where you can have a great variety, but it's
Hmm.
small enough that the communities can feel connected enough to where they
Yeah.
can leverage each other.
Hmm.
And I think what you guys are doing, I mean, as far as the tech ecosystem, I think there is so much energy and focus, so many resources out there to really help bring that about. And I think it really plays a big role in helping people get more exposure to it. So when you talk about, the different programs going on at the innovation center,
Hmm.
you know, what is that like when you're looking at the community, kind of figuring out, hey, this is what we can do as an innovation center to help
Hmm.
drive change? Like, what has that journey been like for you? And how do you usually go about whether that's getting in touch with the policymakers or just
Hmm.
people in the community?
Great question. So, I mean, there's three different levers to this. There's the individual, the communal, and the structural. Those are the three things in which you have to, use those different lens to work inside of this kind of innovation space. Individual, those focus on the programs, right? Those focus on supporting individuals and specific. Communal is really building this kind of uh, efficacy around, the aspirations of a hope, a dream of shared individuals. And then there's the structural, which is the policies that needs to be changed, or the discussions around structural change. What does that mean? We're changing systems, we're changing beliefs, we're changing values around what that looks like. So when it comes down to where I say in the communal, doing a lot of work. So also I'm on part of the West End Revitalization Committee. So working with a lot of partners in the West End as relates to supporting, businesses, or really supporting youth in education. Also was on the West Charlotte High School's advisory board as a chair around their career and tech academy. So, working with those partners, working within the community. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the community, and also understanding, and also we bring the community in. We have, from a university perspective, it's been working with the Council of Elders, the Indaba, which hosts like pretty much every year, to bring the community in to understand issues, but also going out. So there's kind of the pull down, push out, and pull up kind of situations that we see working within the community with community partners, and understanding where can we support, where can we use the different levels of opportunity and change to really, support the kind of things that the community is doing. How can we be additive and not duplicative?
Okay, awesome. Now, when most of the audience here is
Mhm.
probably entrepreneurs and
Yeah.
business leaders, so when you're talking to an audience like that, what are there different resources at the innovation center that they can leverage as they're trying to figure out, their businesses or figure out technology or opportunities?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different resources, and kind of just one that popped up recently is just around helping different folks get access to capital. One is we have a kind of a full, particularly when it came down to PPP, supporting businesses. Like here's a variety of lenders that are supporting and providing, these access in terms of PPP loans to the small businesses in the Charlotte community. Some of them require, don't have a relationship. There's also the things of like, I need some understanding of research, right? So, what are some popular trends that's happening in Charlotte? Because everyone is online, so how are you able to capture that kind of information? We're also like a grow with Google partner, so we have a lot of access to say, how can we help you see where your target market is, but also do some insights, right? So we help in one business with their kind of like understanding their digital footprint and helping them drive that towards their kind of like customer and revenue growth strategy. There's also resources that relates to your market research, right? So a lot of research opportunities that we have in terms of, hey, listen, I'm launching my new product. I need to see exactly who are my competitors and what am I dealing with. A lot of times, people launch products that have a go-to-market strategy without doing any real research, and that's really important because, like, hey, listen, you really need to think about, who are your competitors, what market signals are you happening. We have a wealth of information, particularly around tech and entrepreneurship, which we have partnerships with PitchBook, to really do some raw market research, and also our venture capital fellows. They're able to do some kind of like deal sourcing to understand and say, hey, listen, this is a great opportunity. We can connect them to one of our venture partners or venture, people who are around the country, from working with all different kinds of early stage investors, and also connecting them with early stage investors outside of Charlotte, which has been one of the challenges around getting access to early stage venture capital. There's another thing around understanding what kind of opportunities there may be for leveraging crowdfunding platforms. Recently, there was a rule which had a call with SEC and talk about ways in which people in the community can understand how to leverage crowdfunding and the kind of rules that are out there. One of my friends, just like about 2 weeks ago, associate of mine, she raised over $1 million in crowdfunding, and that's something which is for a female of color to do that and saying, listen, you may be able to raise capital by leveraging different platforms. These new rules, as we talk about, capital formation, this is important for communities of color because say, listen, you can now have equity investments from the people around you and also from people around the country, and it doesn't have to be limited to $200,000. It can go as far as up to $1.6 million. So there's something, but that small little piece of, when I say structural, this happened at the policy level is temporary. And I had a call with SEC early this week, and that ends at the end of August. But it takes time for people to learn about this information, to get this information, and then also to leverage it. So we want to push that out through our newsletters, through our social media outlets, and making sure people are aware of policy changes that can have an impact on their business, on their opportunities, and also on the resources.
Awesome. So speaking of that, where can people go to find that online or on
Mhm.
social media to get
Yeah.
access to those resources?
So yeah, great question. So one of the things that we did create was a resource bank inside of on our Smith Tech Innovation Center's website called smithinnovates.com. That's something put together around different kinds of access for grants, capital, things of that nature that different entrepreneurs, nonprofits, entrepreneurial organizations can leverage, and also to say, hey, listen, this is where we want to be able to leverage some resources, and then also contact and reach out to us around what we can do to support. And those are things that say, listen, we're open, we have office hours for different entrepreneurs. I have a few later on today and tomorrow. So I mean, there's ways in which getting in touch with us, ways in which we can work with the expertise around, and also the various networks that we're a part of. Like you, I mean, I also work with the State Department on global entrepreneurship and engagement. So there's a lot of things happening that have an impact within the Charlotte community.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of have a challenge with, and I think, is very relevant here where you have so many options of where you can spend your time. Like, the challenges that you're trying, or the problem that you're trying to address is such a broad problem. There's so many
Mhm.
different ways to go about it. Like, how do you go through that process of narrowing it down to say, hey, you know what? This area or these areas are the best use of our time to focus on attacking the problem this way.
Mhm. Great question. I mean, you have to use a variety of tools. There's always a cost benefit kind of situation where you're doing some of that, but also there's a lot of understanding what is necessary, what is desirable, what is feasible. I'll use a lot of the design thinking process, right? You have to understand what is desirable, what's feasible, and what's viable, because a lot of times people do things that are feasible, but may not be desirable. There's not really things that people really need, want, or really have an attachment to. Then they may not be viable from the same of saying that the deficiency of resources, the deployment of resources may not be there. So the thing is kind of finding a sweet spot around the intersectionality of those three indicators, or those three pieces of information. And I think that comes down to understanding, comes down to assessing and evaluating, and then comes down to managing and launching. Innovation, is something that has to be managed strategically and intentionally. A lot of people are innovating without strategic intent, and that becomes a challenge. And you have to learn how to look for the opportunities around incongruencies. And I kind of say that that's what entrepreneurs are. Entrepreneurs are looking for incongruencies. They're looking for uh, ways in which a system is broken and finding ways to create opportunity within that space. So you have to really look at that kind of like methodology. There's of course a lot of other, but I think it's kind of the discipline of innovation. Was written back in 1992 by one of former professor, and that really spoke to the heart of innovation. Is really managing the strategic intent of what it is you're looking to do. New business models, new products, new services. They all have require different kinds of modes and operable structures.
Mhm. And I think that becomes very interesting when, I talk to different entrepreneurs or you just talk to different professionals. And I get the sense at times that when people think about innovation, they're thinking, oh, it's creative, it's free flow, like there's no structure to
Oh yeah,
it.
yeah. It's it's kind of divergence and convergence. Me, I'm a chaos theorist and complex adaptive systems person. So you really understand that complexity science is innovation, but it's also managed chaos, because you can't allow for some things to just swell up and go left. You have to be able to manage um, the likable situations that are likely to happen. So like what is the worst that can happen, and how would we be able to manage it? Do we have a resilient team? Do we have a resilient strategy? Do we have resilient resources? What does our infrastructure look like? It's not, if we get hit. The question is, can we do when we do get hit?
Mhm. And I think that that's part of, I guess you say that, that part of developing as a entrepreneur, or whether it's
Mhm.
even if you're a professional, just as a business leader, it's just being able to deal with, like you said, that the the unlikable likable, and just that mixture of, it's not all this way, it's not all that way, it's
Mhm.
a mixture. And just developing that skill set to be able to manage within, the mixture.
Yeah. What we call those are masters of complexity. There's an old, thing around masters of complexity, and entrepreneurs become masters of chaos. There's an old, and as you can mention, this kind of goes into philosophy. um, the Tao, the way, and kind of a sense of like, those who become masters of chaos become gods of war. And that's the kind of way in which you have to, think about that is how do you, begin to master chaos, but also find opportunity in chaos because then you can incite your own chaos that creates opportunity for yourself and for others around
Okay, awesome, awesome.
you.
I think, I think that for everyone listening, that is why you should stop by, the Smith Tech Innovation Center. Because I mean, I think the resources there and the mindset that it takes to really propel yourself into success in the environment that we live in. I mean, it is a very big mindset shift for a lot of people. And I think having access to those resources that can help you make those mental shifts, because a lot of times what I find is it's just little tweaks here and there that can
Yeah.
help you expose more opportunity.
Oh yeah. I mean that's we all grow up with various different kinds of heuristics, our decision making processes, and sometimes we rely too much on them, and then when opportunities come up, we can't see it because we're still relegated to that same kind of thought process. And that's what really is all about. The entrepreneurial journey is all about the mindsets, beliefs, values, and the evolution of those things. And I mean that's one of the things I tell, like, when you walk through our doors, kind of have an open mind. That's it. Is to have an open mind because um, what worked yesterday won't work tomorrow, and that's probably 99% of the situation. People are like, oh well, why reinvent the wheel? I said, well, in the future we're not going to have wheels. We may not even have cars. So the question is not people are not reinventing the wheel. They're creating different kinds of modes of transportation. The
Mhm.
wheel went from being a little big you know, concrete stone to put in part of a car. Now we have airplanes and horse and buggies. All that stuff is gone. So now the thing about innovation is what's going to move the time or the period of time closer together. And people have to think about, oh, okay, well, yeah, why reinvent the wheel? Well, what do we need to reinvent something or create something because we're not going to have wheels in the future.
Mhm.
We got spaceships that we have drones that are pretty much providing automated transportation.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
we have to think differently about what it is when we talk about mindset shifts, and that's pretty much a lot of people who say why reinvent the wheel are pretty much people who don't want to give up that mindset.
Gotcha. I can definitely see that a lot. Now, when you think about the Innovation Center now, because you
Mhm.
guys are associated to the university
Yeah.
now, who is the Innovation Center open to? Like, do you have to be a student there or?
Yeah, so it really was, we had a phased approach, and unfortunately, kind of with the COVID-19, it just like took everything and out of proportion and made things a little bit harder. So really, it's like we had various different types of folks coming in from the community. But now that the guidelines that we're going to have opening back up, it's going to be a little bit more restricted. However, virtually, it was completely open resources, webinars. A lot of the stuff that we're planning is going to be completely virtual. We've got access to capital workshops coming up that are going to be completely virtual with some of our partners at the SEC to talk about the different rules. So a lot of things are going to be more virtual. That's one of the things that you have to shift. Is like, again, um, although we're not physically, there, the thing is that the resources, the connectivity, the opportunities are still there. I mean, I've been working virtual for a long time as a working inside of entrepreneurs and startup stuff. It's just you get used to it. But for those, definitely can reach out. There's a lot of things that we're doing with nonprofits in terms of like helping them develop their grant writing or proposals so that way they can get access to these resources because sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge with getting writing proposals and getting funded.
Awesome. Well, Terik, thank you so much for coming on to the show and
Mhm.
just, introducing us to so many resources that are going on at the tech center and also just helping us, like I said, start to make those mental shifts. I mean,
Mhm.
and I think that as I talk to, entrepreneur after entrepreneur on the show, I guess as you said, it's the journey of making those shifts. And it's just
Mhm.
like you can never get too comfortable where you are, because it's like, hey, you're gonna be on a journey for making shifts for like the rest of your, your entrepreneurial career.
Yeah. Or life.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
think that's a very interesting thing and I talk to professionals and I
Mhm.
tell them that, because even when I was working at GE, when we were going through digital transformation, it's one of those things that, it was eye opening for me in talking with so many people of like, even if you're not an entrepreneur and you just say, I'm just going to get a job and work this job until I retire, like, you're going to be on a journey of shifts as well.
Yeah. And even you can imagine even so many people now, the thing is you have to reinvent yourself, right? You have to reinvent those kind of like, hey, you're going to have to use some kind of entrepreneurial ethos in the next jobs because the future of work, and that's something we've been talking about. The future of work is going to be distributed work. You may have 6 jobs at one time doing a 30-hour work week.
Yeah.
So that's realistic. And working across the globe, we're looking at the gig economy. How do you create value in a gig economy where everyone has access? Well, not everyone, but a lot of people have access to internet and technology. So the thing is like definitely installing and embedding those kinds of like entrepreneurial habits, or opportunity seeking habits, but also the skills that are there. We actually have a tech academy program that's open to the community now that you said that, to help with upskilling a lot of people in Charlotte community. It's completely free, it's completely virtual, and actually can lead to getting the industry recognized credential. So for those who are kind of like, looking to get upskilled and looking to get into digital marketing, whether coding, whatever it is, we're really excited about like, having them participate. And that's also on the website, and that's completely free. Um, and is completely can lead to a lot of different opportunities down the road.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, before we wrap up, one question that I like to ask every guest that comes on is, when you think about entrepreneurship and just business in general, what is one lesson that you kind of learned and observed that you think entrepreneurs need to know this if they're going to be successful in this journey?
How to acquire and manage resources. Um, and I think that comes down to a lot of, a great entrepreneur is always going to be understanding of acquiring resources, whether it's through strategic partnerships, whether it's through, a constant iteration, and also human resources, because a lot of times it really comes down to the who's with you on the journey, who's backing you on the journey, which is also the capital, financial capital, social capital, and political capital. So it comes down to resource management and really helping to understand how to deploy it, acquire it, and manage it. I can't be enough. That is very fundamental. I could imagine that understand those principles going through the GE leadership. It's all about resource management. It comes down to managing your people, acquiring the financial resources, and also acquiring the partnerships that you need to kind of launch and go forth, and also knowing how to say no, because not all things are necessary, not all partnerships are needed, not all capital is good. So those are the kind of things which is also part of that resource management, because people will be seeking resources until eternity, but not all of it will be healthy for the vibrancy of their business, of their journey, and also of their own personal mental sanity.
I think that that is amazing, and that's something that not a lot of people really talk about. Like, that knowing how to manage resource and that part of saying no to things. So that is exactly why, if you're listening or you're watching, why you need to go over to the Tech Innovation Center to find out what they have going on. Check out their webinars and all their free resources there, because Terik has just shared just a small piece of what they have to offer and how they can help your business. So, Terik, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Terrell, thank you so much. Glad to be here. Keep up the great work that you're doing.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms as the Business Talk Library.